Hello everyone, my name is Alpi Sukrian. Welcome back to Basic Visit Podcast Part 2. First of all, I would like to give massive thanks to University of Medan area for facilitating us and giving us support to work on this project. This podcast is also in collaboration with US Consulate in Medan, Faculty of Social and Politics of University of Medan area, and Communication Science Department of University of Medan area. So, what makes this part is more interesting than the first one is because today we have a very special guest. She is a US consulate in Medan. Not only that, but she also has a lot of experience to work across the world as a US diplomat. And the main topic that we are going to talk about today is about cultural adaptation. This topic is both interesting and important to us because there are some of us out there that still sometimes having trouble with dealing with culture shock. So without any further ado, please welcome Miss Jessica Chesbro. Hello, Miss Jessica. Good morning. How are you today?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Okay, I'm blessed to welcome you to University of Medan area, one of green campus in North Sumatra. So, thank you so much one more time for coming, and it's an honor to me to have this interview with you. So, I heard that you arrived at Medan in December 2021, right?
Yes. That's
so what was your first impression of this city once you got here?
Honestly, the first thing that stuck out was the weather. It was very warm.
Okay.
I'm from Oregon in the United States, which is north of California.
Okay.
And it was winter time there when I left, so it was a much cooler climate. And here it was extremely warm and high humidity, so it was a little bit of an adjustment on that front. And aside from that, one of the things that really stuck out was when I'd been learning about Indonesian culture.
Okay.
I'd learned Indonesians tend to be very big on indirect communication and sort of a soft communication style. Mm-hmm. And then I got to Medan and people were like, oh, we're Medanese, just be direct. So that was an interesting thing to learn.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you feel comfortable to live and work in Medan?
Oh, yes, I do. It's a very interesting area to live. I enjoy the many nearby vacation options if you want to go see wonderful bits of nature and learn about cultures and animals they don't have in most of the world. Like you can, go visit orangutans, rhinoceroses. You can see, beautiful areas of Batak architecture and different cultural groups. And the city itself, it's, very warm and friendly people. It's a big city with a lot of things to enjoy, and I've been enjoying living here. Yeah.
Okay. By the way, could you tell us about the background story of how you are working in Medan?
Okay. So I am a U.S. diplomat who has had a number of assignments. I've worked overseas as a diplomat in the Fiji Islands in the Pacific. I've worked in the country of Vietnam and in the Democratic Republic of the Congo in Central Africa. So I'd been in a variety of different environments. Recently I had an assignment in Washington, D.C. And when I was looking for the onward assignment, I found out they were looking for somebody in Medan. I'd always thought Indonesia would be a great place to live and work. I hadn't heard much about Medan, but I looked into it and I was like, oh, that sounds good. And it was a great work opportunities. And they needed somebody on short notice. And I was like, I'm available. So I got the assignment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're moving to a place that you've never been there before, you must see a lot of differences and you must feel different about the things around you.
Right.
So just before you moved to Medan, how did you prepare yourself for that?
Right. Well, one of the things, unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that U.S. diplomats normally do is learn the language.
Okay.
I've been trying to learn it since I've arrived. Usually we get language training before we arrive, and The other diplomats in Medan have actually speak some pretty good Indonesian, which I wish I'd been able to do, but I learned some things about the country, the culture. I read some different things about, experiences both of foreigners and of locals, and I just researched the area and started trying to learn what was available.
Okay. So, you've been working in Indonesia approximately for 8 months.
Yes.
Are there any certain things in your new work environment that caught your attention so far?
Well, like I said, it was definitely interesting to see the cultural difference in different parts of Indonesia.
Okay.
Because the most American diplomats working in Indonesia work at the embassy in Jakarta. We have an embassy in Jakarta, and we also have a consulate in Surabaya. We have a consular office in Bali, and we have our consulate in Medan. And culturally, Jakarta is very different from Medan in some important ways. So we got a cultural briefing about, how Indonesians communicate, and because most of the employees at the consulate and embassy are Indonesians. So we got a cultural briefing for Americans on how to communicate and how to develop cross-cultural understanding. And they were talking about communication styles. And then they were like, oh, except in Sumatra, that's different. And a few different points, he kept being like, okay, it's like this, this, and this, except in Sumatra. I was like, I would need a completely different briefing.
Okay.
So, and then you learn about, Padang, there's cultural differences, and then Aceh, and like even in just our consular district, there's so much cultural diversity in Indonesia and such a richness of like cultural traditions, and it is really amazing to learn about.
Okay. So, have you ever had trouble with adapting to new work environment so far? Because we know that you've been working in several countries. So have you ever had trouble with adapting to new work environment?
Occasionally there's some challenges. So far I haven't had any massive difficulties, but there's always a degree of challenge in terms of learning, how people hear what you're saying. I was mentioning to a colleague that one time I went to a work meeting in Vietnam with a Vietnamese organization, and I was asking a question about a topic that I didn't realize was sensitive. And the response I got was actually a fairly complicated metaphor, which made perfect sense in Vietnamese culture. But for an American who wasn't familiar with the culture, I was a little bit like, okay, what does that mean? And so you kind of learn in different cultures how the things you say are being taken, and there's always an adjustment period.
Yeah, I see.
And like I said, unfortunately, one of the challenges in Indonesia was because of the urgent need, I wasn't able to get language. So that makes it a little more difficult. But I have to say, I'm impressed by how many people out here are willing to communicate in English. Like so many people, I think sometimes they worry because their English is not perfect, but I'm always so appreciative when somebody can communicate in English and they're willing to try. I'm always so appreciative that, this makes it easier for me to live here. And I think for language skills, even if they're not perfect, if you can use them, that always makes a good impression.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So, we move to another question. What project are you working on the past year in Medan?
I've been working on a few different projects. We've been increasing our public outreach. We've been working with different universities in and around the area to do different programs such as speaker programs and this podcast. And we've had some speakers, virtual, hybrid, and fortunately these days we can sometimes do in-person speakers coming out to different organizations and doing public speaking events. So we've been working on that, and we've been working on securing our options for the new consulate we're building, which it's a sign of how invested we are in working in Sumatra. Okay.
So, what programs do the US consulate provide us? Educational programs.
Oh, we do a number of things in education. One thing I would suggest to anybody who's interested in studying in the US is to contact our Education USA advisor in Aceh, their contact information can be found on our website. It's a free service from the US government to give people impartial advice on education options in the US and how to navigate the system. Another program of ours is the Waisili Exchange Program, where people 18 to 25 can go on the academic program and 25 to 35 can go on the professional program.
Okay.
This is a short-term exchange entirely paid for by the US government for usually about 5 weeks, it depends on the program, where they go to get a specialized exchange in different topics such as, civic engagement and social entrepreneurship at US universities and connect with community organizations. It's great for people who are upcoming leaders who want to get new experiences. And we have our community college initiative in partnership with the government of Indonesia. We have a number of programs, so I'm going to just go over a couple of the big ones. And this program allows people to go study at community colleges in the US, which is great for technical and vocational skills, including advanced topics such as, pilots, some medical technician work, graphic design, hotel restaurant management, a number of professions, as well as being an option that can give people partial credit towards university education in the US.
Okay, so are that programs is one of your plan to strengthen and maintain the relationship between Sumatra to US?
Yes, these are part of our plan. We actually we are very committed to our partnership with Indonesia and to Sumatra in particular. We're working on a number of issues together, including, security issues, economic partnerships, and, educational partnerships. So we are very committed to that. That's part of the reason why we are building a new consulate and we're expanding our staff here.
Okay.
And the education programs I find are a very important part of that in terms of, economic development, educational opportunities, and just maintaining positive, mutually beneficial relationships.
So we move on to the next question. So far you've been working in several countries in the world that are far away from home actually. Have you ever felt homesick?
Yes, sometimes. Normally my assignments are about 2 years, and if you spend 2 years away from home, you occasionally feel homesick. I have to say, one of the things I really appreciate is how much easier it is to do video calls these days. It's very helpful when you miss your family and you want to connect a little bit to be able to do a video call.
Okay.
And I do try to take some of my vacations back home where I can visit everybody and reconnect. Yeah.
So how do you solve that when you feel homesick?
Like I said, I try to let myself have something familiar. Like when you're in a new country for a long term, you do want to get out and enjoy the new cultural experiences, but if it's going to be months or years, you occasionally need to give yourself a break and do something familiar and let yourself have something that you miss. Occasionally I look for something or even cook something that's like a treat that I think of from home. My mom always made chocolate chip cookies, which I keep insisting are the best in the world.
Okay.
Which I've had multiple people around the world go, actually, these might be the best. And that's a treat that I know how to make so that if I feel nostalgic. And just like I said, video calls with my family and getting to sort of enjoy that for a little while. And then when I feel like, a little refreshed, I go back out and engage with sort of the new culture where I am and make sure that I get a chance to appreciate and enjoy that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we are in the last question and the most important one. What strategies do you use to deal with culture shock? And please give us some tips or expats out there who is experiencing cultural shock right now.
I'd say try to be patient and kind both to yourself and to the people around you. Because the two things that can go wrong in culture shock, one is a tendency to take your own feelings of stress and assume that the problem is with other people. Like if the new culture, they may be behaving in ways that you don't immediately understand, everything's unfamiliar, there's new sources of stress, and people who are like, oh no, I'm very angry at them for doing that, they don't have good cultural adaptation. So it's important to understand everybody, they have cultural reasons for doing things a certain way. They're usually very good reasons when you understand them, and it may take you time to learn, but it's worth it to learn. The other thing I find is be a little patient with yourself, because if people put too much pressure on themselves to adapt perfectly, then they can create unnecessarily stress, because everybody has their days of frustration. everybody needs some breaks where they go off and do something familiar. Everybody, you know, has the moments of like, okay, I can adapt to a lot of things, but I really need this to adjust for me. And one thing I found great in Indonesia is like the people I've encountered are very open to working with people, Americans, and wanting us to have a comfortable experience. So if an American's like reasonably adaptable and reasonably open to, you know, learning about Indonesian culture, people here don't expect perfection. People are like, okay, so this is our way, but you know, we can make some adjustments for you. And you get much better adaptation cross-culturally when everybody meets each other partway. And that leads to much happier and more harmonious relationships.
Okay, so I think I got the conclusion of your tips that the first one is that we don't have to put the high standard or the perfection of adaptation, okay?
Right.
And I think that you just told us that when you have to deal with culture shock, you have to do something familiar to your home, right? So I think that's the conclusion.
Yes.
Okay, so Miss Jessica, thank you so much for the tips that you just shared with us. I learned so much from you, so many things from you, and thank you so much for coming. So guys, I think that was a very interesting talk with Miss Jessica Chesbro, and I hope that we can learn well from that. I hope that culture shock will not be a problem for us in the future. So just FYI that we are now in UMA Library building, and let me tell you that UMA Library is well accredited with A accreditation, and it's open to the public also. So I recommend all of you out there who love to read books to visit UMA Library, and we will be very happy to serve you. I think that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.